Thursday, July 16th here at Cape, and today we have a couple fun interviews. I always say we have fun interviews, but they are, especially today, because we speak with John Penaloza, who created and moderates the highly popular Facebook group Rockport Stuff. So you can find out how P.T. Barnum did it, and now you can find out how John Penaloza does it too.
All right, so do you guys know the origin of Rockport Stuff?
No, tell the story.
Okay, cool. So some friends of my kids and their parents, we had an idea that we wanted one winter to have somewhere to swap skates, because the kids grow out of skates and then you need the next ones for the next winter, and everybody's like pond skating on Millbrook Pond in Rockport. So I started a site called Rockport Stuff, literally stuff, and we started swapping skates there, and I basically added everybody that was on my friends list that lived in Rockport, right? So we started with 300 members, and it just grew organically from that. So now we're almost at, I think it's 8,000 members now.
It's huge.
That's
Yeah.
the whole town is 8,000 people.
I know, the whole town is 8,000 people. So basically in our member requirements, we say that the group is for Rockport, Massachusetts residents, or somebody who has ties to Rockport, right? And we don't really check that, but when people join the group, they assert, oh, you know, I used to live there, or I really want to move back there, or I lived there as a kid and now I live somewhere else. So there's a big conglomeration of people that ostensibly have some connection to Rockport.
So now, John, at some point though along the way, it begins to turn into like a modern op-ed page, right? Where everyone's sort of weighing in on the hot topics. So how did that come about?
You know, it's funny, ever since day one, there was never a lack of opinions available on Rockport Stuff, right? So I intended to make, I mean, my biggest intention is to make a meeting place, or basically a town square, where anybody could talk, everybody has the freedom, you know, freedom of speech and freedom of opinion, but also has an expectation that they aren't going to be personally attacked for something they say, right? So you have to walk a very fine line between airing a controversial opinion and not necessarily attacking somebody else. So with that in mind, you know, people feel like it's an open place, a place for open dialogue. So there's a lot of other places on the internet that either are completely bound with trolls and bound with, you know, stuff that people don't want to see, or they're over moderated and over sanitized, right? So I found that if you could limit a corner of the internet to just the people that say live in Rockport or have something to do with Rockport, you can allow all kinds of topics to exist in this little microcosm of the country, right? So I specifically don't ban political issues that are of national importance, right? Whether it's presidential politics or COVID or anything else, because our primary criteria is topics that are Rockport related, right? Or topics that affect Rockport. So Rockport are affected by presidential elections and by a national pandemic as much as anybody else in the country. So it makes for some interesting fodder, certainly.
Yeah, so are you comfortable being in that moderator position? Is that something you know, that you enjoy? Because it can't be easy.
You know, it's second nature to me just to be checking it like all the time. But on the other hand, I have a laissez-faire streak that people maybe don't recognize as much. Like, I let people have at it, and I try to set up clear boundaries, and there is a list of band members that's over like 200 people long, right? So maybe people aren't used to not being able to just attack somebody willy-nilly and not have any repercussions for it. But the people that understand that, there's a lot of them that are very active members of the group.
So John, right now you are super active in trying to protect the Atlantic Path. What other big, we could return to that soon, but what other big issues do you feel you've taken on?
You know, in the past, it's funny. Some of the biggest town issues have been around, like, sometimes issues of national political dialogue. Like, there was once where Rockport had a resolution to be a welcoming community when it was at the time when a lot of the immigration issues were going on. And what that revealed was that Rockport is a reflection of the country as a whole. You know, maybe in liberal Massachusetts, we have a smaller percentage of people who maybe agree with some of those conservative ideas of the current administration, but they're definitely there, and they're your neighbors, you know? So it makes really good sense to be able to dialogue that, to be able to talk out those ideas and see where people stand. There was that, and then the longtime issue that was that was like our first greatest hit was the guy that bought the house and put up the helicopter pad behind it and wanted to land it, right? Oh my God, that was incredible. And that's also a reflection of other things, right? So there's incredible income inequality across the country, and it gets reflected in a place like Rockport, where Rockport is getting gentrified, right? So there's a lot of people moving from out of town and finding these very cute little houses, and the price of real estate goes sky high, and people that have lived in Rockport, or, you know, several generations later, can't afford to, say, raise their kids in Rockport because of the price of housing. So that's something that definitely affects the character of the town.
What is the deal with 18-wheelers on Nugent Stretch?
18-wheelers on Nugent Stretch, as far as I know, they could park there overnight without a problem, because having them park downtown would be even more ridiculous than it is now.
So is that the controversy? Because every once in a while I look on Rockport stuff and it's like they're all talking about the 18-wheeler on Nugent Stretch. Okay.
That's a favorite topic. It's also, what you're going to call the very buoyant platform that sometimes gets put out on Front Beach in the summer, which isn't this year because of COVID.
Yes, right.
It's whether it's the raft, or is it a float, or what is it? The buoyant quadrilateral is my favorite.
That's great. So do you want to catch us up with the Atlantic Path? Because you've been like really taking that on with a lot of energy. And so what's the update there?
So the update there is that we keep walking it every Sunday, as far as we can read, and, you know, we don't have any like legal advice for the group, or the core of activists that are interested in defending the Atlantic Path. But as far as we can read it, we need to use it or lose it. So if the landowner is able to block, you know, the historic easement over their property and keep people from going over it, they can use that in a future case to argue abandonment of the path. So as far as we know, we're doing our part. We're hoping that the town and town council, I mean, we've been told that they're engaging with the landowner to find some kind of an accommodation, but I'm not sure what kind of accommodation exists to a historic path. They are proposing alternate routes that would be unpassable by many of the people that enjoy the path today. So
the path is, they're trying to divert the path to a lower, closer to the waterfront.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, down to the ledge. And specifically, that section of the path has about a 3-foot drop off that isn't easily traversable by anybody. So, we don't find that a good alternative, especially since once you lose the rights to the historic easement, they can take away the alternate path at any point.
Hey, John, I want to ask like even a broader question about why groups like this exist and some of the great things that come from it. Like you always see the very best in people, I think, in small doses, but it's like there's a house fire in the neighborhood. Within half an hour, you know the clothing size of all the people from that home and drop-off stations, and that's happening in a heartbeat. And then there's the mouth breathing and the fighting and all that stuff that happens too. But what are some of like the coolest things that have come out of your experience in moderating Rockport stuff?
All right, so that's funny. Like we typically have, lost pets and dogs and so on. Nowadays, my advice would be keep your cats inside, because there's way too many other forms of wildlife that are hungry on Cape Ann. I give that as general advice. But a lot of times if there's a dog loose, they'll find the right owner in no time. Or if somebody loses their keys or something like that, you can find the right owner, and it wouldn't happen that way a few decades ago. One of my own personal examples was, what the heck was I doing? I was making like banana bread, and I needed really overripe bananas, and all I had was green ones, right? And I posted on Rockport Stuff, and within half an hour, I had somebody to swap 10 new green bananas for 10 well overripe bananas. And I was able to make what I was making. Oh, and the other thing was like Parmesan rind too, because I was making some soup. So it's really cool for that kind of stuff,
Yeah, it's a virtual way to borrow a cup of sugar now. You can start it.
Exactly, and it keeps you rooted to your community. It keeps it real. If anything, I've learned that Rockport Stuff is a reflection of stuff that's really going on within a few miles of where I live, and it's just an amazing feeling, right?
So, and we're kind of in a weird boat because we have large followings and two different types of platforms under the same umbrella. So I'm wondering what you think about Facebook and how things have sort of evolved there over the last few years.
Oh my gosh. Facebook is kind of ridiculous, because I believe that Mark Zuckerberg has nothing better to do than to figure out how much more money he can have and how much more influence he can have, believing that, he's the best influence in the world of tech, right? And it's either willful disregard for seeing the negative sides of it, or just too much greed in order to maximize his income, right? So it's funny that Rockport Stuff kind of and other community groups around the country overlay some control and some moderation of the negative sides of that, whereas the platform itself is rife for abuse, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's a reason why people go onto Rockport Stuff so much and not into just unmoderated Facebook, because maybe we've built something that's more valuable and more pertinent to people and is a positive thing.
I have a question, John. I'm wondering if you've seen any of this and you've been able to sort of call it out. But there was a group in Newburyport, a mom's group.
Okay.
And some of the mothers thought there was something a little funky going on. And this group had been in existence for about 4 years. And they found out, and this is a legitimate story, this is being actually investigated. They found out that the group had been completely infiltrated and taken over by a white supremacist nationalist group based out of the Ukraine.
Wow.
Their group is called the Proprietarian Institute. It's a white nationalist think tank, and this is legitimate.
Wow.
And one of the leaders lives in Rowley, and he was able to get into this group, and apparently they are trying to penetrate particularly moms groups and groups worried about COVID. So have you seen anything like that? Like any suspicious posts that feel like they're sort of, trying to lure commentary?
So in our group, we have a further restriction for membership, which is that you have to use a real name profile, and that's hoping to push out or weed out trolls that might be joining, or bot accounts. Anytime I see somebody that is not using a profile that looks like somebody's real name, I remove it from the group. The most I've had is people with regional accounts that may be advertising their service for Rockport, even though they're not based in Rockport, but that's allowed by our rights, by our norms. I haven't seen specifically anything like that, like the fake news kind of posts, other than stuff promulgated by group members on hot topics of like national debate, right? But no.
Yeah, right. Okay, just wondering.
Yeah, and I've also kept myself as the only admin, right? So that I think helps in not losing control of the group.
Yep, and that can present some problems too, but I think it's also for the best of,
Yeah.
you have to dampen the flames at some point,
Yeah.
Some people live for that stuff. But honestly, John, like I think you're doing a great job. Like I'm just glad I run a business page, But the problem there too is, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. You don't pay Facebook, you reach a tiny fraction of that number.
Yep.
Groups, everyone gets notified all the time. So there's always, and Facebook covets engagement too.
Yeah,
so
right.
Allow more people. It's really, it's one thing I can't stand is how every interaction is a manipulation.
Yeah, tell
Facebook,
me about it.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows what's next if there's going to be, because Facebook's not going away, but geez, they're not doing themselves any favors.
Yeah.
And now with COVID scare and maybe a second wave happening and an election year, I think your job's going to get even trickier.
Oh my God, tell me about it. I think there's probably legislation coming down the pike to control social media in general, and maybe it's lack of truthfulness or lack of fact checking, but I'm hoping it's not done in a way that's heavy-handed. I think it'll be very dependent on which administration we'll have next.
I once took my husband's hockey equipment to the dump, and I have never been forgiven for that. So one of my favorite posts on Rockport Stuff was a woman who put her husband's hockey equipment in the driveway because she was cleaning things out, and someone came along and picked it up thinking it was trash, and she posted on Rockport Stuff right away, "Hey, who took my husband's hockey equipment?" And it was returned within an hour. So that Rockport Stuff does good work.
Yeah, it's these Facebook groups are very powerful places to share ideas and get information out and be eye reporters and have things done instantly. So, and they're not easy to manage. I mentioned that several times in the interview, but good luck. I'm happy that I do what I do. I don't have to deal with that all day, but it's riveting. The most popular meme is Michael Jackson eating popcorn in the Thriller video, because that's just every other post in that group. You're just waiting to see what's going to happen.
And we all go there for those things, so it works.
Well, another great chat we had, Heather, was with Jenny Benedict. She is the new executive director of Sawyer Free Library, and here she is talking about how she ended up on Cape Ann.
So good morning, Heather. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm just delighted to be here and have the opportunity to say hello to the community through 1623 Studios. I'm Jenny Benedict. I'm the new library director for the Sawyer Free Library. I am relocating to Gloucester from the West Coast, so West Coast to East Coast. Formerly was the director of libraries at the West Vancouver Memorial Library. Served for 9 years in that role.
Great. And how, can you compare your experience with that library with what you're foreseeing will be happening in the Sawyer Free Library, particularly capital projects, because it looks like there'll be a lot of work in that, right?
Yes, I'm very excited about the expansion and renovation of the Sawyer Free Library. At West Vancouver, I worked in a similar facility that was a multi-generational building, had 4 different components that had been built in different, over the generations. So many similarities in terms of wanting to preserve some of the historical elements of that facility, but also bring them up to a 21st century library standard. So that's going to be really fun, and I look forward to bringing all of my experience to the Sawyer Free Library.
So particularly that 21st century standard, explain what that is. I know the Sawyer Free has been doing a lot of moving to digital, and particularly under COVID, they really ramped up their ways to reach out to the community. But what are you seeing that could be possible?
Sure. So I think, historical libraries are very much places of resources where you go for resources, and used to be the physical book. Physical book, I don't think is going anywhere. The last 10 years have shown us that people still love them and want them. But the library, it has taken a more prominent and unique role in communities in terms of supporting economic vitality and cultural connections and educational attainment, and also social well-being. And the ways that libraries are engaging in that type of space is really around building community. So it's a lot of bringing the community together. And that requires different kinds of spaces in the library. Ones where we can have social interaction, ones where we can have experiential learning also. In the digital world, there's a lot of learning that is sort of hands-on, and it's also innovative and experimental. So bringing the community together in spaces where they can do that. So of course, in our current environment, COVID-19 is making that a little challenging. So we're doing it in a virtual online way. But those are sort of some of the themes that will run throughout what we're doing.
Jenny, I want to know, how do you end up in Cape Ann from West Vancouver? And now that you've sort of sized up Sawyer Free, what were your first impressions of Sawyer Free Library?
I think the Sawyer Free Library is wonderful. I was attracted to the library it has a really compelling mission and vision, and it's in a community that really values its library. And those, for me, are the things that will draw me to a library. So I think, the Sawyer Free Library is this place of learning and innovation and creativity. So it's really important to me that those be embedded in the library. And it also inspires to be that very best kind of library where it's going to build connections between people so that we have a sense of belonging in our community to the place and also to the people that work and live and play here. And that's a community that I like to be a part of. And it's a unique community. Not every community, works that way. So, so I was really attracted to a combination of the library and the community, and also just the place. I think many people have been drawn to Gloucester because it's a spectacular, waterfront landscapes and its vibrant cultural arts and the diversity in the community, and then it's really sort of interesting and colorful history. So in many ways, I think I'm attracted to Gloucester for the same reasons that people have been coming here for, generations and decades and centuries.
So any good, what are the high points that you've read about Gloucester? What are the stories that you've heard that really kind of resonate with you? Because there's so many great stories, and I just
absolutely.
Yeah.
I will. It's sort of like when I was coming out to Gloucester and visiting. Every time I came, it was like I fell in love with something new. And one of the first of those moments was being down on the boulevard and seeing I'm kind of going to bungle the name, I know. The Fisherman's Wives statue that's down on I got it right. Okay, fabulous. On the boulevard, and that sculpture, it is just resonates and has so much feeling of this wife and the family, and they're looking out, to the ocean with sort of this mixture of both longing and hope, but at the same time angst, So you get that feel from the boulevard of Gloucester as this seaside and fishing community that is such a foundational part of its history. So that would be one. At the moment, I am reading about Dogtown. So I just started to read about Dogtown, and this weekend I think I will go out and hike some of the trails out there.
Oh, great! Cool. I'm going to put a little plug in for a website that I help run called The Other Cape.
Yeah.
And I only do that because there is a new section on there all about Dogtown. And there's a beautiful essay by a local resident who's a great writer, Greg Gibson, about Dogtown. So
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry for that, Corey.
Jenny, what do you see? What are sort of the bigger challenges that Sawyer Free is facing now, not only during the COVID pandemic, but just the library's place in its community present day? It's a lot different than what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what do you, what do you see as the big challenges there, or the opportunities that could arise from those challenges?
Sure. Well, if it's okay, I'd like to talk about COVID first, and then we'll talk about that. Currently, from the Massachusetts safety workplace requirements, we have quite a lot of work to do around reconfiguring our space and also putting in guidelines and procedures so that the public and staff will be safe. And a lot of those are really risk mitigation, and also so that we can, really, we know we're all in this together, and we really want to contain the spread of the virus. So we're working on that plan actively, and I would love to come back. And when we're ready to share that, and when we have a firm date of when we'll be reopening, it's going to look a little different. And so it'd be great to give people a sense of what to expect when they'll be coming to the library. So, I think in terms of challenges and opportunities, obviously the restoration of and expansion of the building is both a tremendous opportunity. At the same time, it's coming at a time that is going to be challenging to really, our timeline is to have a shovel in the ground in 3 years. So this year is, and we don't know how long our current working environment is going to go on. So, sort of how we bring those two visions together and get them on a timeline, that will be somewhat challenging. I think the Sawyer Free Library has ambitions and aspirations, and I think having the resources to support those visions is something that we'll be working on. Yeah.
And how do you see working with the other leaders in the community? Have you been meeting with them, and are you feeling like how do you feel about that going forward?
Yeah, I'm really excited to work with community leaders and residents. It's a big part of how I've worked in my previous role in West Vancouver. So I'm very accustomed to collaborating with my fellow leaders in the community. So far, I have met the people that sit at the city managers table, and also a shout out to Melissa Dimond from Wellspring. She was one of the first people to jump on a call and welcome me to the community, and I kept her on the phone for about an hour and a half, getting her perspective on Gloucester. So that was really fabulous. So yes, I am hoping, within the first 3 months, there's so many great administrators that are here in the community doing fabulous work, and really want to connect with them. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, and lastly, Jenny, do you have any message for the community now that you've settled in?
Absolutely. I've just relocated to downtown Gloucester, so I am out and about in the community. Please feel welcome to say hello, introduce yourself, call me on the phone, ask, see if you have a burning question, and Heather's got a burning question that's coming up, I understand. So just really looking forward to meeting everyone in the community.
So I'm so impressed by Jenny Benedict, and I'm impressed by her grace and energy going forward, addressing the COVID situation with this city and her library, and having a new capital project shovel ready in 3 years. That's ambitious.
Between that and Gloucester's 400th, she's going to be pretty busy the next 3 years too. And I'm wondering if she's going to regret challenging people to call her or stop her on the street to say hi. But yeah, that was pretty fun. So yeah, congratulations to Jenny and welcome to Gloucester. Tomorrow, Heather and I speak with Erica Brown. She's the editor and publisher of the Manchester Cricket, and Taylor Bradford, the Gloucester Daily Times. That is it. We will see you then.